When my daughter told me to find somewhere else to die, telling me I was useless now, I packed my bags like the obedient mother I'd always been. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, discovering that my supposedly loving husband had played the longest game of chess in history. Victoria was about to learn that sometimes the pawn becomes the queen. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how I went from a homeless widow to the woman holding all the cards. Because, honey, this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. 2 months ago, I was Susan Miller, a devoted wife of 43 years and mother to one spectacularly ungrateful daughter. When Richard died of a heart attack at 71, I thought my world was ending. Victoria swooped in during my grief like a vulture in designer clothes, cooing about how difficult this must be for me. "Mom, you can't possibly manage this big house alone," she'd said, her voice dripping with fake concern. The stairs, the maintenance, all those memories. It's not healthy. I should have seen the calculation behind her concern. Victoria had always been Richard's favorite, his little princess who could do no wrong. When she married that investment banker, Kevin, and started producing grandchildren, Richard doted on them all. Meanwhile, I was just the woman who cooked and cleaned and kept everything running smoothly. After the funeral, Victoria became increasingly insistent about my situation. She'd bring Kevin over for family dinners where they'd corner me with real estate pamphlets and retirement community brochures. "Mom, these places are wonderful," she'd say. "You'd have people your own age, activities, no responsibilities." What they meant was no inheritance to split, no inconvenient mother to deal with. The final blow came last Tuesday. I'd been living in what Victoria now called our house for 6 weeks since Richard's death. Victoria arrived unannounced with Kevin and 2 large suitcases. "Mom, we've made a decision," she said. "Kevin got the promotion, and we need to move into town immediately. This house is perfect for us." I stared at her, not quite comprehending. "Move in, but this is my home." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Victoria, surely there's been some mistake?" "No mistake," she said. "Dad knew I'd take better care of his legacy than you ever could. You never understood money or investments. You were just the wife, just the wife." 43 years reduced to those 3 words. That's when she delivered the killing blow. "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." I packed my things in a day. 43 years of marriage, fitting into 2 suitcases and a small box of photos. Victoria watched from the doorway, checking her watch. "There's a nice senior complex on Maple Street," she offered. "Very affordable. I'm sure they have openings." Affordable. My daughter was inheriting $33 million, and she was suggesting I check into what was essentially a welfare facility for the elderly. Kevin loaded my suitcases into their BMW with the efficiency of someone disposing of garbage. "Susan, you'll love having your independence again," he said. "No more worrying about house maintenance or property taxes. No more home," he meant. As we drove away, I watched my house, Richard's house, Victoria's house now, disappear in the rearview mirror. I'd spent 4 decades making that house a home. Now I was being driven to a budget motel like an unwanted guest who'd overstayed her welcome. The Sunset Inn was exactly what you'd expect from a place charging $49 a night. Thin walls, thinner towels, and a carpet that had seen better decades. Victoria handed me $200 in cash like she was tipping a hotel maid. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled," she said. "I'll have Kevin transfer some money into your account once we sort through Dad's paperwork. Some money from my own inheritance." After they left, I sat on the sagging mattress and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 3 hours, I'd gone from grieving widow to homeless senior citizen. But as I sat there in that depressing motel room, something began nagging at me. Richard had always been meticulous about his affairs. He'd shown me the will years ago, explaining his wishes, and I was absolutely certain that's not what it had said. Richard had been many things, but he wasn't cruel. The man who'd held my hand through my mother's death wouldn't have left me destitute. The next morning, I used the motel's Wi-Fi to search for Richard's attorney, Harrison Fitzgerald. His office was downtown, a 20-minute bus ride that cost me precious cash but felt necessary. When his secretary announced that Miss Miller was here about her husband's estate, he looked genuinely surprised. "Susan, my dear, I was wondering when you'd come in," he said. "I tried calling your house several times, but Victoria said you were traveling." My stomach dropped. "There was a reading? Susan, you were supposed to be there. Victoria said you were too distraught that she'd handle everything and make sure you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I was never told about any reading. Victoria told me she inherited everything." Harrison Fitzgerald's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He pulled out a document, and I recognized Richard's neat signature at the bottom. But as Harrison began reading, I realized Victoria had lied about everything. "I, Richard James Miller, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife Susan Ann Miller the following, our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts totaling approximately $23 million." My head started spinning. $23 million. The house, 70% of everything. Harrison continued reading. "To my daughter, Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I leave $10 million to be held in trust, with distributions beginning on her 45th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death." Richard had known. Somehow he'd known exactly what Victoria would try to do. "Mr. Fitzgerald," I whispered. "Victoria told me I inherited nothing. She moved into my house. She gave me $200 and suggested I find a senior facility." The elderly lawyer's face flushed with anger. "Susan, what Victoria has done is called elder abuse and fraud. She's committed multiple felonies. But she had legal documents. Forged, most likely, or documents from an earlier draft. Your husband updated his will 6 months before his death, specifically because he was concerned about Victoria's attitude toward money and her sense of entitlement." "There's more, Susan," Harrison said. "The trust provision for Victoria specifically states that if she fails to treat you with respect and dignity following my death, the entire $10 million reverts to you instead." I stared at him in shock. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $10 million, he said. "Her inheritance is now yours as well." "You're not inheriting $23 million, Susan. You're inheriting $33 million plus the house and all personal property." The irony was so perfect, it was almost funny. Victoria had been so eager to claim her inheritance that she'd triggered the exact clause designed to protect me from her greed. "What do I do now?" I asked. Harrison smiled. "Now, my dear, we call the police about the fraud, and then we call Victoria and inform her that she's about to receive the shock of her life." "Can she fight this?" "With what money?" "She's about to discover that every account she thought she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset except your house is frozen pending investigation of her fraudulent activities." I thought about Victoria in my house, probably already planning renovations, shopping for new furniture with money she thought was hers. They had no idea that in about 6 hours, their entire world was going to implode. Harrison Fitzgerald's office became command central for what he cheerfully called Operation Justice. He contacted the police, the banks, and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the magnitude of Victoria's deception. "The forged documents are quite sophisticated," Detective Rodriguez explained. "This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime. Someone planned this carefully." "You think Victoria had help?" I asked. "Almost certainly. We'll need to investigate whether Kevin or someone in his financial network was involved." Within 2 hours, every account had been frozen. Victoria's credit cards linked to what she thought were her new inheritance accounts were declined. My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, where are you? There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Daddy's assets are frozen." "Hello, Victoria," I said. "I'm sitting in Harrison Fitzgerald's office. You remember him? Daddy's attorney, The one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling. Silence. Then, Mom, I don't know what you think you discovered. I discovered that you're a liar and a thief, I interrupted. Sweetheart, I also discovered that your father was much smarter than either of us realized. You don't understand, she said. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money. I understand perfectly, I said. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and threw your 6-7-year-old mother out of her own house because you thought I was too stupid to notice. Her voice turned sharp, desperate. Mom, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional state. The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed, Victoria was trying to manipulate me. Victoria, dear, let me clarify something for you, I said. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $10 million your father left you, is now mine as well, thanks to a lovely clause he included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Rodriguez is sitting right here if you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with her. The phone went quiet. I could almost hear Victoria's mind racing. Mom, please, can we meet somewhere and talk about this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon at the courthouse when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter. Something cold and final crystallized in my chest. Watch me. I hung up. The police arrested Victoria at 8:30 p.m. while she was having dinner at a fancy restaurant, apparently celebrating her inheritance with Kevin and another couple. Kevin was arrested at his office the next morning. I spent my first night back in my house in 43 years, sleeping in the master bedroom. Victoria had already moved her belongings into the space, so I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch. The house felt different now, not because Richard was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as mine. For decades, I'd maintained it as Richard's sanctuary. Now, looking around with clear eyes, I realized how little of me had ever been reflected in these rooms. That was about to change. 3 days after Victoria's porch confession, Kevin's mother, Eleanor Hayes, showed up at my door. Eleanor was everything I'd expected, perfectly coiffed, dripping with jewelry, and radiating the kind of entitlement that only comes from 3 generations of inherited wealth. Margaret, we need to discuss this situation rationally, she said. Kevin made some poor choices, obviously, but prosecuting him seems rather vindictive, don't you think? Vindictive? Your son helped steal my inheritance and threw me out of my own house. Eleanor smiled, clearly believing she'd found an opening. Kevin's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $2 million in exchange for dropping the charges against Kevin. $2 million to forgive the man who'd helped steal $33 million from me? Margaret, be realistic. Kevin has a career, children, a reputation to maintain. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice, I said. She then offered a final offer of $5 million. The amount was staggering, but the principle was non-negotiable. My answer is no. After she left, I called Harrison immediately. I wanted to know everything about Richard's business. I hired a private investigator named Carol Chen, who specialized in financial crimes. Miss Miller, your husband was running a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm, she said. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the past decade. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Richard was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was washing money for organized crime families. The $10 million Richard left Victoria, that money came directly from laundered funds. My phone rang. Victoria's number. Mom, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Daddy that change everything. I already know, Victoria, I said. I know about the money laundering. Mom, listen to me carefully. Kevin's lawyers have been in contact with the FBI. They're willing to let us renegotiate our situation. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way. Victoria had turned my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Victoria, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting Daddy's crimes, I said. I'm asking you to be practical. The alternative is losing everything and potentially facing charges yourself. I need time to think. I sat in the darkness of Richard's study, surrounded by the evidence of his double life. She'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated who I was when my back was against the wall. I picked up the phone and dialed Carol Chen's number. "Carol, how quickly can you get me a meeting with the FBI?" 3 hours later, I was sitting in my living room with a recording device taped to my chest, waiting for Victoria and Kevin to arrive for what they thought was a surrender meeting. "Mom, you look better than you have in weeks," Victoria said. "I feel better." Clarity has that effect. Kevin opened his briefcase with the efficiency of someone who'd conducted similar negotiations before. "Susan, our lawyers have structured this very favorably for you. You retain the house, $5 million in clean assets, and complete immunity from any charges related to Richard's activities." "What about the $33 million Richard actually left me?" I asked. "Mom, that money is tainted. It can't be separated from Daddy's criminal activities. Taking $5 million is the best outcome possible." "And you two?" I asked. "What do you get out of this arrangement?" "We get to put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us," Kevin said. "Victoria's charges disappear. My reputation remains intact." Misunderstanding. He was still calling felony fraud a misunderstanding. "Kevin, help me understand something," I said. "When exactly did you discover Richard's criminal activities? I mean, did you know about the money laundering when you married Victoria? Or did you discover it recently when you were planning to steal my inheritance?" Kevin and Victoria exchanged glances. "Margaret, I don't think that's relevant to our current discussion." "Actually, I think it's very relevant because if you knew about Richard's crimes and said nothing, that makes you an accessory after the fact. And if you only discovered them while committing your own crimes, that makes you remarkably unlucky." "That's ridiculous," Victoria said. "Is it?" "Agent Martinez finds it quite plausible," I said. The color drained from both their faces. "Agent Martinez. FBI. She's been very interested in my story about systematic elder abuse, fraud, and extortion, particularly the part where you tried to blackmail me with my dead husband's crimes. Victoria Sullivan Hayes and Kevin Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness," Agent Martinez said. Victoria turned to me with an expression of absolute betrayal. "Mom, how could you do this to your own family? The same way you could forge legal documents and steal my inheritance, sweetheart, except my way is legal." After they were removed, Agent Martinez sat back down across from me. "Mrs. Miller, Kevin's warning might not be entirely empty. Your husband was connected to some dangerous people." "How dangerous?" I asked. "The Torino crime family primarily. They've been using legitimate businesses to launder money for decades." "Are you saying I'm in actual physical danger?" I asked. "Potentially, but there's something else you should know about your husband's operation. Something that changes everything." Agent Martinez pulled out a thick file folder. "Mrs. Miller, your husband wasn't just laundering money for the Torino family. He was an FBI informant. For 12 years, he was providing information about their operations." The world tilted sideways. "So, the $33 million is legally yours. Your husband died before the investigation concluded, but his cooperation over 12 years directly led to 47 arrests and the seizure of over $200 million in criminal assets. Your daughter and son-in-law's fraud scheme actually helped us confirm your innocence. They were planning to blackmail you with information that would have actually exonerated your husband." The irony was so perfect, it was almost poetic. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my renovated house making coffee for two. The morning sun streamed through new windows, illuminating countertops I'd chosen myself for the first time in 43 years. Victoria and Kevin were each serving 18-month federal sentences. "Your portfolio is performing excellently," my new financial advisor, Sarah Chen, said. "The charitable foundation is fully operational, and the scholarship fund has already selected its first recipients. The Susan Miller Foundation for Elder Protection had become my primary focus." "Any word on the documentary?" Netflix confirmed the production deal, Sarah said. "The Mother's Revenge, an American crime story, was being developed as a limited series with the proceeds going to elder advocacy organizations." Victoria had written me 17 letters from federal prison. I'd read the first few, which ranged from self-justifying to desperate, before deciding to stop opening them. Some relationships once broken can't be repaired with words, I thought. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, grieving, dependent, willing to accept whatever scraps of dignity my family offered me. That woman was gone. Sarah, schedule a meeting with Victoria's lawyer, I said. Not to reconcile, but to make something clear. I want Victoria to understand that her actions had consequences beyond legal punishment. I want her to know that she destroyed our relationship permanently and that her children will grow up knowing why their mother went to prison. The doorbell rang, and through the window, I could see a delivery truck with a large package. It was the new furniture for my art studio, Richard's former den. I was rediscovering my love of painting, something I'd abandoned when I got married. "Susan, do you ever regret how this all played out?" Sarah asked. "The prison sentences, the media attention, the permanent family estrangement." I considered the question. 6 months ago, I'd been invisible, a widow with no money, no home, and no prospects. Today, I was a millionaire philanthropist with a foundation, a documentary deal, and a purpose that extended far beyond my own survival. "Sarah, my daughter tried to steal everything I owned and leave me homeless," I said. "My son-in-law created forged documents and threatened me with blackmail. They showed me exactly who they were when they thought I was powerless to stop them. But they're still family." "No, they're still DNA," I replied. "Family are the people who protect you when you're vulnerable, not the people who exploit your vulnerability for profit." In the art studio, I uncovered my latest painting, a self-portrait of a woman standing in bright sunlight. The woman in the painting looked nothing like the grieving widow who'd packed her life into 2 suitcases 6 months ago. This woman looked powerful, independent, unafraid. She looked like someone who'd learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be. Tomorrow, I'd continue building the life I'd chosen rather than the life others had planned for me. And if Victoria wanted to rebuild a relationship with this woman, she'd better bring a lot more than prison letters and hollow apologies. She'd better bring a complete transformation, one that matched my own. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.